Hi, I'm Tim Courtney, Chief Investment Officer here at Exencial Wealth Advisors. One thing that I had always kind of been interested in was finance and markets. But in high school, really, you would think a subject that large and that effectually everybody would be, you would have that education, or there would be classes. And really, there was scant to no education really about that whole, about how markets work, about economics and how we interact with each other in doing business and transactions and work. So in college, I tended to gravitate towards some of those classes that dealt more with economics and markets, and really enjoyed it. And my first job out of college was in banking, and that was in the mid-90s. And then as we got into the late 90s, we had this market run of the late 90s, which eventually led into the technology bubble of the late 90s. But I was really intrigued with markets, and I was working in Dallas at the time. And so, financial companies were hiring all the people that they could find. And so I worked for Fidelity Investments there in Dallas for several years. That's how I completed my interest for the area of economics and finance, and got into markets. My interest in it led me to really have discussions with my family and my kids, either whether we were at dinner or we might be out on vacation, and I noticed something, and I felt like I could kind of make a connection for my kids and explain maybe how markets and economics are affecting things that are touching their lives every day. And so I guess through those discussions with my kids, my son also developed a love and interest for markets and economic things. And so he's in school currently, and looking to graduate with a degree in finance, and also look towards markets for a career. In one, this was probably a couple years ago, before the pandemic, but we had a conference in the summer, and so he was able to go with me to the conference, and he heard different speakers, and I kind of really encouraged him to learn more and be more engaged in the topics. I was living in Dallas. I had grown up in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, but my wife and I were living in Dallas. We wanted to really move back home to Oklahoma and be closer to family, and so that's when I started working at what at that time was Burns Advisory Group, and led by John Burns, who also grew up in Broken Arrow and was a graduate of Broken Arrow High School, as I was. And so we found out later that we had several of the same teachers and several of the same classes, so that was interesting. But at that time we were basically building the business, and during the day we would meet with clients, we would manage portfolios and make recommendations and service the business, and then at night we would have classes at local colleges, UCO. We might have a couple classes a week that we would teach, and that led us to generate additional business, and through word of mouth, just started growing the firm. At that time, as you do with lots of small companies, you wear multiple hats, and everyone was wearing 10 to 12 hats. As you pointed out earlier, a lot of the technology changes are just unbelievable. The fact that as we were getting ready for meetings with clients, we would have to call up to the custodian and get balances over the phone to prepare for meetings, and then hand calculate performance numbers. And so it was, technology has made things a lot easier. But yeah, I'd say it's great to have grown to the point that we have, and have all the additional talent that we now have, and it's allowed everyone in the firm to be able to more specialize and use their own kind of interests and talents to focus on serving clients. So that's been, I think, the best thing that's happened over the last several years. After years of building the business, and we had discovered that we had a way of doing things, a way of providing service to clients that was, I guess, it was popular. It was working, and we found that we were getting a lot of referrals, and but we still needed, I think, additional help and talent to grow the firm more. And so through the years we moved from Burns Advisory Group to Exencial. We did that through merging with other successful companies that focused in areas that while we had some knowledge in, we were not experts in. And so each time we merged with another firm, we picked up additional capabilities that we didn't have before, and really have moved towards having a fully integrated financial services company for that can deliver a multitude of services for our clients. I think a couple things that our strategies are based on philosophically is, one, there's no free lunch. And really what that means is you can't just go invest and make easy money. Certainly there are times in the market, we've just gone through a year in which so many assets have done so well and have just eye-popping returns. But markets are efficient enough. They're not perfect. They don't always give you the perfect price for an asset. But they're efficient enough so that you just can't go in and make easy money. And so that's, I think, ultimately what there's no free lunch means. And we acknowledge that. We acknowledge that there's no free lunch, and that it's hard to make money. When you go back and look at many people's portfolios and look at the returns that they've achieved over decades, in many cases they're far below what average market returns are. And there's a study that gets updated every year called the Dalbar study, and it looks at this issue about, we know what the markets have done. We know what the S&P 500 and what the Dow Jones and what the MSCI indexes have done, but how has the average investor done? And when they look at that, they find that they've underperformed markets by a good amount. And it's because it's not easy to capture those market returns. You have to be invested in times in which it's very uncomfortable to be invested. And in many times you have to stay in your seats when it seems like the wrong thing to do. But that is how those returns are generated. You don't get to have 7, 8, 9, 10% a year returns easily. If you want to have those easy kind of safe returns, you're looking about getting, say, 1% or 1.5%. But to get those higher returns, it's not free. And so that's one of the philosophical kind of underpinnings for a lot of our strategies. Is it's difficult to capture those returns, and in many cases you've got to be, it takes work and discipline to capture those. I think what's the most exciting about managing the portfolios is the way that the different parts of the puzzle kind of all come together. and ultimately for servicing our clients. You have things like taxes to consider. You have things like planning, what our clients' ultimate goals for those monies are. You have the client's cash flow needs, and how much money they're spending, how much money they're bringing in. And the kind of the culmination of all of those things ends up with a portfolio that should be tailored to answering all of those other components of a plan for a client. And so I think what I find most interesting is to see it all come together in a portfolio, and then have us basically bring some of the discipline that we know we need to capture those returns, to make the plan work, to make sure that clients' cash flows work, to make sure that future family goals and gifting and estate planning are working by the mechanics of the portfolio kind of delivering that over time. So just to see it all come together, I think that's the most exciting part.